It began with a storm unlike any other. Thunder cracked like the sky itself was breaking apart, and rain fell not in drops, but in sheets that scoured the earth. Wind howled through the trees, snapping branches and bending pines like they were reeds. The mountain forest was drowning in darkness, illuminated only by lightning that tore through the heavens like silver claws. Elias Rook stood alone at the edge of a clearing, soaked to the bone, boots sunk deep into the mud, breath short and visible in the freezing air. The weight of his medic's bag pulled on his shoulder as if urging him to turn back. But he didn't. Something had brought him here. Something more than the storm, more than chance. It was instinct, or perhaps that strange, silent voice within him that had always drawn him toward trouble others dared avoid. He had served in 3 tours overseas, seen more carnage than he cared to recall, and patched wounds with trembling hands while bullets whistled overhead. He had left that life behind 5 years ago, bought a cabin in these mountains with his savings, and tried to forget. But the past never truly lets go. It clings like wet cloth in the rain. He wasn't supposed to be out here. The storm had knocked out the power in his cabin, and the radio tower 2 miles north was his only means of contact with the outside world. He had set off just before dusk. Now, the world had changed around him, become something primeval and unknown. As he stumbled through the trees, guided only by flashes of lightning and the pull in his chest, a low, guttural sound stopped him cold. Not thunder, not wind, a groan of pain, so deep and resonant it felt like the ground itself was mourning. Elias crouched instinctively. He moved forward with caution, slipping between the trunks of ancient trees until he reached the edge of a burnt-out clearing. Smoke hung heavy in the air. Flames licked at the edges of scorched logs and shattered boulders. Something had happened here, something violent. In the center of the devastation lay a shape too large, too impossible to understand at first glance. A mountain of scales, black and glistening, with wings tattered like broken sails. It took him a full 10 seconds to accept what he was seeing. A dragon. It wasn't a statue. It wasn't a hallucination. It breathed, barely. Its sides rose and fell in ragged, shuddering motions. One massive eye cracked open and glowed like molten gold. Its gaze locked onto Elias, and for a moment, time stopped. Every nerve in his body screamed to run. But he stayed. There was blood, thick, dark, and steaming, pooling beneath the creature's flank. Strange metal shards protruded from its side, smoking and sparking like they had been fired from something not of this earth. He stepped closer. The dragon growled, a sound of warning. Its jaws parted slightly, revealing teeth the size of his arm, but it didn't move to attack. It was too weak. "I don't know if you can understand me," Elias said, his voice barely audible over the rain, "but I'm here to help." He knelt, the soft earth giving way beneath his knees. His hands moved automatically, as they had 100 times before, unpacking gauze, antiseptic field scissors. The metal embedded in the dragon's side was alien, sharp-edged, humming faintly with energy. Elias didn't know what it was, but he knew it didn't belong in flesh. He reached for it. The dragon growled again, weaker this time, a rumble filled with pain rather than threat. "I have to pull it out," Elias whispered. "Just hang on." With a grunt of effort, he wrenched the shard free. The dragon roared, a sound that shook the trees, but did not lash out. Blood gushed, but Elias pressed gauze to the wound, applying pressure. He worked with focus, hands steady despite the insanity of the moment. Minutes passed, then more. He treated the worst wounds, cleaned the burns as best he could, and covered the exposed muscles with a makeshift compress. When he finally sat back on his heels, the dragon stared at him, blinking slowly. Rain had washed away some of the soot, revealing the intricate texture of its scales, like obsidian laced with fire. The eye closed, not in death, but in trust. Elias exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. He leaned back against a boulder and let the rain soak through him completely. He'd done all he could. Whether the creature lived or died now wasn't in his hands. Thunder cracked again, but he no longer flinched. Eventually, the storm began to ease. The winds softened. The rain settled into a steady patter. The dragon remained still but breathing. Elias stood slowly, every muscle aching, and cast one last glance at the creature. It didn't move. He turned and walked back into the woods. The trail back to his cabin was longer than he remembered. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound louder. By the time he reached home, dawn was beginning to edge the sky with pale light. He peeled off his wet clothes, tossed them into a heap, and collapsed onto the couch. Sleep came quickly, deep and dreamless. When he woke, it was late morning. The sun filtered through the window in soft gold beams. For a moment, Elias wondered if it had all been a dream. But the muddy boots by the door, the empty medic's bag, and the strange ache in his hand said otherwise. He made coffee slowly, hands still trembling. He kept glancing out the window, expecting. What? Another dragon? A patrol of soldiers? Nothing would have surprised him now. But the forest outside was quiet, peaceful. He sat at the table, staring at his mug, trying to make sense of it. Why had the creature been there? What had wounded it? Where had it come from? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Not a light tap. A deliberate, forceful knock. Elias stiffened. He wasn't expecting anyone. He hadn't spoken to another person in weeks. The knock came again. He stood slowly, heart thudding in his chest. He moved to the door and opened it cautiously. 3 figures stood outside. Tall, unmoving. They wore black suits that shimmered strangely in the sunlight, as if they were absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. Helmets obscured their faces, and the patches on their arms bore no insignia he recognized, only strange geometric shapes, glowing faintly. The one in the center stepped forward and removed his helmet. He looked human, but something was off. His skin was too pale, his eyes too sharp, too glassy. His expression didn't change as he looked Elias up and down. "You treated the asset," he said flatly. Elias blinked. "The what?" "The creature. The anomaly. You interfered." "I didn't know what it was," Elias said, trying to keep his voice calm. "It was dying." The man didn't blink. "You disrupted containment. I saved its life." A silence stretched between them. Elias's knuckles whitened around the edge of the door. "We are authorized to extract you," the man said. "Who are you?" Elias asked. The man didn't answer. He only nodded once. The other 2 figures stepped forward. Elias slammed the door and bolted for the back of the cabin. His breath was loud in his ears. He grabbed the emergency pack he kept under the sink, slung it over his shoulder, and kicked open the back door. The forest greeted him like an old friend. He didn't look back. He ran. Somewhere behind him, in the quiet clearing where the dragon had almost died, something ancient stirred again. And in the shadows of the trees, a story that had been waiting for centuries was about to be told. Elias Rook was no longer just a man hiding from his past. He was now a piece of something much larger, a witness, a protector, and perhaps, if he survived what came next, a hero. But first, he had to survive. The woods closed around him, and the hunt had begun. Branches lashed at Elias's face as he sprinted through the underbrush, heart hammering against his ribs. His boots tore up wet leaves and moss, each step a defiance against the foreign threat now invading the only sanctuary he had ever known. Behind him, no voices called, no weapons fired, but he felt the presence of those suited figures moving, hunting, like they didn't need to see him to find him, like they knew exactly where he'd go next. He veered off the deer trail and plunged into a narrow gully, sliding halfway down its muddy slope before regaining his footing. His breath came in short, ragged bursts, and his hands ached from clenching the strap of his emergency bag. The forest wasn't just a refuge anymore. It was a battlefield, and he was prey. Up ahead, through the veils of mist and rain still drifting between the trees, a low rock outcrop jutted from the hill. He ducked under it, crawling on his stomach into a hollow space barely large enough for a man. He lay there, listening. Nothing but the slow drip of water from pine needles. No footsteps, no whirring machines. Only silence, and the pulsing roar of blood in his ears. His thoughts raced. Who were those men? They weren't military, at least not any branch he'd ever known. Their suits weren't standard issue. Their speech, their presence, the unnatural symmetry of their faces, it all felt wrong. Manufactured. And their word, asset, it replayed over and over in his head. The dragon. Had he stumbled into something classified? A government experiment? A captured creature? He had seen its wounds. The metal fragments. The burns. Not from swords or arrows, but something far more advanced. Something alien. He sat up carefully and took out a flare from his bag. Not to light, but to check the map he had folded into a waterproof pouch. His finger traced a route, not toward civilization, but deeper into the mountains. There was an abandoned firewatch tower north of his location. He'd found it once, years ago, half collapsed and unreachable by road. If he could reach it, he might have the height and distance to regroup, to think. Before he moved again, he forced himself to calm his breathing. The army had taught him that panic kills faster than bullets. He whispered to himself, grounding his mind in the present, then slipped back into the trees, moving low and fast. Hours passed. The sun never fully broke through the clouds, but the light shifted subtly, marking the passage of time. He avoided open paths, circled through creeks to mask his scent and trail, and drank sparingly from his canteen. Twice he saw movement, a shimmer in the distance, the brief glint of a helmet, but he changed course before they could close in. By mid-afternoon, his legs burned from the climb, and his vision swam with exhaustion. Still, he pressed on. The memory of that creature's eye, half-lidded in pain, lingered in his mind. Not as a horror, but as a promise. He had saved it. Whatever it was, he had saved something that bled, that trusted him, even for a moment. That meant something. Finally, the ridge came into view. The firewatch tower stood like a skeleton against the sky, its frame half collapsed, steps broken. He approached cautiously, his every movement deliberate. Once inside the rusted shell of the platform, he found a small crawl space beneath the floorboards, likely used once for tool storage. He pried it open, crawled in, and laid silently in the musty dark. Only then did the tremor in his hands return. Memories of war surged up. Ambushes, betrayals, the way comrades could vanish in a blink. He had buried those days deep, and yet here they were again. But this was different. This wasn't a man-made war. This was something stranger, something older, something hiding in the cracks of reality. As night fell, he rested, but did not sleep. The wind howled through the broken slats above, and the forest came alive with distant sounds, unfamiliar ones, mechanical and organic, fused in ways he couldn't explain. It was then he felt the vibration, a low, continuous hum beneath the ground, subtle but undeniable. The air felt charged, and then the sky lit up, not with lightning, not with stars, but with moving shapes, sleek and soundless, carving through the night like sharks beneath water. Black crafts, triangular, with no visible propulsion, no rotors or wings. They drifted above the trees, scanning, searching. Elias pressed flat against the earth, his mouth dry, his heart in his throat. From one of the crafts, a narrow beam of white light scanned the treetops like a needle. It passed just meters from the tower, but didn't pause. Within seconds, the shapes drifted onward, disappearing into the horizon like ghosts. He waited an hour before moving again. With the tower compromised, he had to assume nowhere was safe. He needed knowledge. Answers. There was one place that might help. An old ranger station 5 miles east, long abandoned, but built with storm shelters beneath. If there were records of strange sightings, old maps, or even communications gear, it would be there. He set out under the cover of darkness. The trek was slow and methodical. He stayed low, moved silently, pausing often to scan the canopy. No more crafts, no more suits, just the sound of insects and owls, and the ever-present whisper of the wind. By dawn, the ranger station appeared through the trees, a moss-covered structure, roof partially caved in, windows broken. But the basement was intact. He pried open the rusted doors and descended. Inside, dust and mildew clung to the air. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with outdated emergency supplies. Maps, reports, notebooks from different era. He dug through them, hands working fast. Many were useless. Fire patrol logs, animal sightings. But one binder labeled anomalous activity, Sector 9, caught his eye. He flipped it open. There were reports going back decades. Sightings of winged shapes. Strange lights in the sky. Livestock found burned or vanished. No official response. Just notes from rangers and redacted margins. Then, near the back, a photograph. A creature. Massive. Reptilian. Wounded. Exactly like what he had seen. Dated 3 years ago. He stared in disbelief. This wasn't new. They had known. A sound above interrupted his thoughts. A creak. A footstep. He froze. Dust filtered down through the boards. Another step. Slow. Careful. He drew the folding knife from his bag, blade barely gleaming in the dark. Then a voice. Elias Rook. Not a command. A statement. Calm. Measured. He said nothing. The voice continued. We know you're down there. We're not here to harm you. Elias gripped the knife tighter. You helped one of ours, the voice said. You're not the first to try. But you are the first that accepted. Silence. The trapdoor creaked. Then opened. A figure descended slowly, unarmed, helmet off. It was the same man as before, but something in his eyes had changed. Less clinical. More curious. You don't know what you've stepped into, he said. No, Elias answered quietly, but I know it's real. The man nodded. There's more. We want to show you. Elias didn't move. Why should I trust you? Because the creature does. And you saved it. That stopped him. Why was it here? Elias asked. The man's expression flickered. It escaped. From somewhere it was never meant to be. A lab. A prison. Far above this world. Elias stepped closer, knife still in hand. And you're here to take it back? No, not anymore. We failed to contain it. Now we need to understand it. And that begins with you. Outside, the wind shifted. The forest held its breath. Elias looked past the man, toward the distant trees where something ancient had stirred. A choice loomed before him. Run again, or follow the truth to its edge. He tucked the knife away. Then let's go. The man turned. We leave now. Elias followed him into the dawn, unaware that his role in the story had changed forever. And in the far distance, a low rumble echoed from the mountains. The dragon had awakened. The journey through the forest took on a new weight, no longer a flight from pursuit, but a march toward revelation. Elias moved beside the stranger, the silence between them thick with unanswered questions. Trees closed in around them like sentinels, and each step seemed to draw them closer to something unfathomable, something ancient and unyielding. They said little, conserving energy and trust alike. Elias studied the man, compact build, methodical stride, the subtle glint of cybernetic enhancement at his temple. Not a soldier in the traditional sense. Not fully human either, Elias guessed. A hybrid of some sort. But his calm demeanor hinted at weariness, as if he'd carried secrets too heavy for too long. After hours of quiet descent along a slope of fractured stone, the stranger finally spoke. You ever wonder why no satellite picks up these anomalies? Elias gave a half nod. I figured they were buried. Or hidden. They are. Veiled. Reality's veil. A dampening field, older than your species. Cloaks what's not meant to be found. And you work for someone who sees through it. The stranger didn't answer right away. We were sent to enforce the veil. Now, we're trying to understand what it hides. Elias let that sit. The wind picked up, and far off, a tree creaked under the strain. He glanced skyward, wary of more of those silent crafts. But the canopy remained unbroken. Eventually, they reached a clearing. In its center stood a stone monolith, fractured at its base and covered in moss. Symbols shimmered faintly across its surface, impossibly intricate, shifting shapes that resisted focus. We found her here, the man said. The dragon. She emerged from this place, broke through the veil. Half alive. We weren't ready. Elias stepped forward, drawn to the monolith. A hum pulsed beneath his boots, faint but real. He touched the surface. It was warm. What is this? Anchor point. One of many. Markers between your world and what lies beneath it. Beneath. The man exhaled slowly. Dimensions. Stacked like pages. And, sometimes, something slips through. Elias turned to him, jaw clenched. You're telling me the dragon isn't from space. It's from somewhere else. Closer than you think. But unreachable. Most of the time. Elias looked back at the stone. The humming grew louder in his ears. So why show me this? Because you touched it. Fed it. Spoke to it. And it listened. That's never happened. A bitter laugh escaped Elias. I gave it medicine. Anyone would have. Not anyone, the man said. You didn't run. They camped by the monolith that night. The air was heavier here, thick with energy that made Elias's skin itch. He lay on the forest floor, unable to sleep, eyes fixed on the tree line. The quiet was deceptive. He sensed movement beyond it, shadows in the dark, drawn to the pulse of the veil. Sometime before dawn, it arrived. No roar announced its coming. No storm preceded its wings. It simply emerged, silent, towering, coiling like smoke with eyes of liquid amber. The dragon. It landed without a sound, folding its wings close, and regarded Elias with something that felt like memory. He stood slowly, every muscle tight. The creature's scales shimmered like oil in moonlight, and when it stepped forward, the forest seemed to bend with it. You remember me, Elias said quietly. The dragon lowered its head. A rumble, almost a purr, rolled from its throat. The stranger knelt, not in fear, but in respect. She crossed back. Only briefly. She followed you. Elias stepped closer. He could see the wound along her side, partially healed now, pulsing faintly with golden light. What do you want from me? He asked. The dragon didn't speak, not in words, but something flowed into Elias's mind. Images, feelings, a planet devoured by war, chains, pain, a prison without walls, and a single chance for freedom. You escaped, he whispered, but they're coming for you. The dragon's eye blinked slowly. Agreement and fear. Elias turned to the stranger. They'll track her again, even here. The man nodded. Unless she hides somewhere they can't follow. Where? The stranger hesitated. There's a breach site, an old rift, sealed decades ago. If she can reach it, she might vanish beyond their reach. But it's unstable. And watched. Of course it is, Elias muttered. The dragon stepped forward, closer now. Her gaze locked onto Elias's, and he felt it again. Connection. Not ownership. Not command. Something else. A bond formed in pain, hardened in survival. Then we get her there, Elias said. The stranger raised an eyebrow. You're sure? Elias nodded. I'm not leaving her. So they moved. 3 shadows under a cloud-choked sky. Man, machine, and myth. Every mile toward the rift site took them deeper into forbidden territory. Warning signs faded to rust. Land cracked open in unnatural patterns. The forest thinned, giving way to scorched earth and strange flora pulsing with faint, eerie light. The dragon flew low, wings tucked, her power dimmed to avoid detection. Still, machines followed. Drones flitted past like insects. They were drowned only by the thunder of Elias's heartbeat. One night, as they rested in the lee of a broken ridge, Elias looked at the stranger. "What's your name?" The man paused. "I was called Harrow. Once. That's not a name. That's a sentence." Harrow almost smiled. "Fitting." Elias watched him for a moment. "Why help me? I was like you. A soldier who stopped believing in orders. I saw what they did to her kind, to anyone who disobeyed. And now I want to be free too." By the fourth day, they reached the rift perimeter. Steel pylons jutted from the ground like thorns, humming with dormant energy. A fractured dome lay half-buried beneath vines, flickering with blue sparks. The barrier between worlds, scarred and unstable. "She can pass through," Harrow said, "but only if we distract the patrol." Elias's stomach turned. "You mean draw them in?" "I'll stay. Buy you time." "No," Elias said. "We both go. We lure them, split their force. You circle back, trigger the gate. I'll get her through." Harrow hesitated, then nodded. "We have one shot." The plan unfolded with brutal precision. Elias and the dragon moved wide through the basin, drawing fire. Lights blazed from above as crafts descended, releasing soldiers in silver armor. Harrow, from the ridge, unleashed a magnetic pulse that shattered their scans. Chaos bloomed. Elias ran beside the dragon, ducking plasma bursts, guiding her through shattered bunkers and broken glass. The ground shook. The gate opened, a whirlwind of light and void. "Go," he shouted. The dragon hesitated. "Look back. Go," she roared, a sound that shook the stars, and vanished into the rift. Elias turned to run. Too late. A blast knocked him to the ground. Pain. Blinding pain. His shoulder burned. He crawled forward, vision tunneling. Harrow appeared, dragging him behind a wall. "She made it," Harrow gasped. "You did it." Elias coughed, blood on his lips. "We did." Then everything went dark. He awoke in a place he didn't recognize. Clean, quiet, sterile. Machines beeped faintly. Sunlight filtered through a tinted window. Harrow sat nearby, bruised but alive. "Where are we?" Elias croaked. "A safe house. Off-grid. You were out for days." Elias sat up slowly, pain slicing through his ribs. And the dragon? Gone. Beyond reach. Silence stretched between them. "She'll be safe?" Elias asked. Harrow looked away. "I hope so." Elias leaned back. Despite everything, the blood, the fire, the chase, he felt something strange. Peace. Somewhere, a creature that had known only torment now flew free. And he had helped make that possible. But this wasn't the end. A soft knock echoed at the door. Harrow stood, weapon drawn. Elias tensed. The door creaked open, and in the light stood a child. Not quite human, not quite something else. Eyes glowing faintly. A message in her hand. Elias stared. The message read, "She remembers you." He took it, and knew, deep in his bones, that the story was far from over. The days that followed blurred into one another. Elias recovered slowly, not just from the wounds to his body, but from the searing silence left behind by the dragon's departure. He had poured his hope, his fury, and his fractured soul into protecting something the world wasn't ready to accept. Now, with her gone and the world quiet again, he wrestled with the emptiness that followed. The kind of quiet that came not with peace, but with the anticipation of a storm. Harrow remained nearby, a silent guardian and reluctant companion. He spent hours by the window, watching the skies, scanning transmissions on an old, cracked device he never let out of sight. Elias noticed how the man flinched at every static flicker or distant rumble, as though expecting the heavens to crack open once more. The child who delivered the message hadn't returned. She had come and vanished like a specter, her presence raising more questions than comfort. But Elias kept the note close, worn now from fingers that unfolded and refolded daily. She remembers you. There was solace in those words. And wait, do you think they'll come back? Elias asked one evening, voice low. Harrow didn't turn. They never stopped watching. We just got ahead of them for a moment. The wind whispered against the reinforced walls of the safe house. Outside, the sun dipped low, bleeding crimson across the horizon. What if she find a way back? Elias asked. Harrow sighed. Then the war begins anew. Elias stood, joints stiff, and walked to the window. The sky held the kind of color that made you believe in things. Miracles, monsters, maybe even redemption. But Elias didn't need to believe anymore. He had seen it, touched it, bled for it. She didn't escape, Elias murmured. She was sent. Harrow turned, expression unreadable. What makes you say that? Elias tapped the note. She remembers me. Not because of me. Because I'm part of something older. Something she knew before. You think this was fate? I think it was planned. The air shifted, heavier now. Somewhere deep within the earth, something rumbled. Harrow crossed the room in 2 steps, retrieving his scanner. Lights blinked erratically. Frequencies warped. That's not tectonic, he said. Elias didn't flinch. It's her. The ground shuddered. A tremor, subtle but growing. Dust danced along the floorboards. Outside, birds erupted from the trees. She's not coming back, Harrow said. She's breaking through. Elias was already moving, grabbing supplies, pulling on boots still slick with dry blood. Harrow followed, silent now, and for the first time, afraid. They emerged into a world holding its breath. No wind, no sound, just stillness, and then a crack. Like thunder being born, the sky tore open. From the tear descended light, not blinding, but profound. It moved like liquid thought, and within it, the shape of the dragon returned, but altered, larger, healed. Her wings shimmered with spectral energy, each beat rewriting the air around her. She landed at the forest's edge, her gaze scanning until it found Elias. He stepped forward without hesitation. You came back, he said. Her thoughts poured into his. No words, only images. A corridor aflame, a battle between unseen forces. A beacon shattered and remade. She hadn't returned by accident. She had forged a path. Others followed. Behind her, shadows emerged. Winged, horned, some walking, others gliding. Not all dragons. Not all beasts. Some looked like her, but smaller. Others like ancient spirits carved from stardust and sorrow. Harrow raised his weapon. No, Elias said. They're not here to fight. The procession halted, as if awaiting instruction. The dragon stepped forward, then lowered herself fully to the earth. A ripple passed through the air, and then, from the light behind them, came something else, tall, humanoid, robed in fibers that shimmered like the veil itself. Its face was masked, a lattice of symbols shifting endlessly. Elias's breath caught. It spoke without sound, its words manifesting directly in the mind. Keeper of the threshold. Elias blinked. What? You opened the gate not with force, but with mercy. You are now its guardian. Harrow stepped forward. He's just a man. The figure turned to him. That is all it ever takes. Elias felt his knees go weak. I don't understand, he whispered, the robe being gestured to the dragon. She carried pain older than your stars. You offered healing without expectation. That act unraveled the knot. What knot? The veil. The wound between worlds. Elias backed away. I didn't ask for this. The being's gaze pierced him. Which is why you were chosen. A hush fell over the gathered. Even the creatures held still. Then the ground cracked again. This time, not from her return, but from something deeper. A black tear appeared in the earth, pulsing. Something moved within it. Something that hadn't come through the veil. Something that had always been here, bound, buried, waiting. The dragon reared back, snarling. The robed figure turned sharply. It is not yet healed. The wound fights back. From the tear, a form began to rise. Like tar given shape, its body crawled with countless eyes. It shrieked without mouth, a cry that burned the leaves and bent the trees. Elias stumbled. "What is that?" he asked. "Remnant of the dominion that once ruled all veils," the figure answered. "It must not breach." The dragon surged forward, flame lighting the sky. Others followed, throwing themselves at the rift spawn. Elias looked at Harrow. "We can't just watch." Harrow nodded. "We don't have the fire, but we have the spark." They ran to the monolith, the anchor point. It pulsed now, brighter than before, activated by the dragon's return. Elias reached it, placed both hands on the stone. Energy surged. Images flashed. Worlds layered like glass. The dragon's memories. His own pain. The act of healing replayed, brighter each time. And then, a voice, not the robed figures, not the dragons, but something older. "You have shown mercy. Now show resolve." The stone cracked. A blast of light erupted, slicing through the rift spawn. It screamed, folding inward, its form dissolving into mist. The earth sealed. Silence. And then, a single breath, collective, trembling. The robed figure stepped forward. "The gate remains, but is no longer a wound." Elias sank to his knees. The dragon approached, touching her forehead gently to his. "You are free," he whispered. Her eyes gleamed. So was he. Later, much later, after the others had returned beyond the veil and the skies had mended, Elias stood alone at the monolith. Harrow had left, chasing redemption in another part of the world. The robed figure had vanished with the others. But Elias remained. The monolith had changed, smooth now, humming softly. A gateway, dormant but watchful. And Elias waited, not as a soldier, not as a fugitive, but as a keeper. Somewhere, across the stars, across the veils, she flew, free, remembered, and remembering. And one day, when the worlds brushed close again, he knew she would return. Not in chains, but in light. And this time, she wouldn't come alone.